So I was talking about the NAACP. So Thurgood Marshall, he's an NAACP member, and he's the one that's going to actually be the lawyer for Linda Brown and her father in the Brown versus the Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas. And he'll be the first African American justice on the United States Supreme Court. So what's the purpose of the NAACP? Kind of just what I said. It is to fight to end segregation. It is to gain equal rights for all people. So who is Marcus Garvey and what did he support? So Marcus Garvey is the guy who comes out with the Back to Africa movement, and he wants to actually get African Americans to go back to Africa on his Star Cruise line. And he does the United Negro Improvement Association, so the UNIA. What are Jim Crow laws? Jim Crow laws are basically segregation laws. And remember, a long time ago, we called them black codes or slave codes. So remember, after Nat Turner does his slave rebellion, what you see happening is the southern white plantation owners really get harsh and really get strict on freed and slaves. And so those laws just kind of transition over time and they just keep changing names. But Jim Crow laws are segregation laws. They're de jure segregation law. I'll even write it down just in case. De jure, which means by law. Why was the grandfather clause enacted? So when you look at the grandfather clause, remember, it was to ensure that all white males could still be able to vote. Remember back when we looked at Southern society during slavery times, you had the white plantation owners who were at the very top. Then you had like small farmers, they were next. Then you had poor whites who didn't have any slaves and they didn't have any land. They were next. And then at the very, very bottom of the pyramid, you had slaves. So these poor white guys, they've always felt superior to black people. And so now, you know, black people have the right to vote, or at least black males have the right to vote. And so they want to feel like they're better than somebody. And so this is done to make white guys feel better about themselves. List and describe the 4 progressive amendments. So when you look at the progressive amendments, remember what I told you, TESOL, right? So the 16th is a graduated income tax. And remember, this is done because farmers are being abused, at least they think so, by the tax laws. And so when you looked at it, they used to do a flat tax where everybody paid like 7 or 8 or 10% of your actual income, your land. Okay, it was based on land. And so farmers always have more land than factory owners because farms, you have to have hundreds of acres to make money. And for a factory, you know, 1, 2, maybe 3 acres at the most. So the people who were making billions didn't pay nearly that much in taxes as the farmer was. So remember, the 16th Amendment is something that the Populist Party actually thinks about in that Omaha platform. That's back there in goal 4. The 17th Amendment is the direct election of senators. This means whoever gets the most votes wins. And the reason why this is wanting, or why people want this passed, is you have people like Tammany Hall, the political machines, who are controlling politics. So now you and I, when we go and we vote, we decide who we want to be our senator, and whoever gets the most votes is actually going to get it. No more of this like somebody chooses like the primaries. No. You and I, the voter, it increases the power of the voter. That's why it's so important. The 18th Amendment is the Prohibition Amendment, which means alcohol is illegal. Okay, so this is going to kind of cause a lot of problems that we see back in Goal 9 with the 1920s, 1930s. 19th Amendment is women's suffrage. That means women get the right to vote. The reason why this amendment is kind of important is that not just because I'm a woman, but it's also going to be because President Woodrow Wilson is going to pass it into law thanks to all the women's help during World War I. So President Woodrow Wilson gets these actually ratified under his time. So you have the 13th, 14th, 15th, free citizens vote, and then 16, 17, 18, 19, TESOL. These are the big amendments you need to know. When we look at defining the initiative, referendum, recall, I want you to define them and tell me how it increases the power of the vote. So an initiative, you get a petition started. So you want to make a change, you maybe want to make a new law. A referendum is when people actually get the vote on the proposed law. So that's when you actually go to the polling place and you vote on a ballot. A recall is when you remove your government officials who are not doing their job. All of this increases the power of the voter. You and I can make changes to the law if we like. We can make a new law if we want. We get the vote on it, whether we want it or not. And we can remove people from their job if they're not doing their job. So just because you get elected governor for 4 years, it doesn't mean you have the job for 4 years. So if you suck at your job, you're not doing the job, you just collected a paycheck, the people of your state can vote you out. So what union did Samuel Gompers lead, and how did he contribute to their success? So he leads the AFL, the American Federation of Labor, and he makes strikes effective. So we've kind of already talked about this, so make sure you just kind of go back. So when we look at Goal 8 is World War I, known as the Great War. So we list 2 reasons for U.S. entry into World War I. U.S. and European entry are 2 different things, guys. Remember, the Europeans enter because of mania. Militarism, alliances, nationalism, imperialism, and assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. The U.S., 1, we don't care about an Archduke because we don't have kings and queens. We have people that we elect. And 2, that's all on their side of the globe, so we really could care less. So when you look at why the U.S. is actually going to enter the war, it has to directly threaten U.S. security, or else we're not getting involved. So 2 reasons. 1, unrestricted U-boat activity. The German subs, their submarines, are attacking our boats out there on the Atlantic Ocean. See, now the war is not just on the European side of the globe. Now it's on American side of the globe, and it's hurting our economy. It's hurting us. Like, you can't mess with our money. The second reason why the U.S. gets involved in the war is the Zimmerman Note, or the telegram. The Zimmerman Note, Arthur Zimmerman, who's an ambassador, a German ambassador, he goes ahead and he sends a message to Mexico. And the message basically says, hey, Mexico, we know you're probably still angry about the Mexican War in which you lost, the American Southwest to the United States. We'll give it all back to you if you start a war with the United States, start a war with them. If you start a war with them, get them busy on their half of the globe. Once we, Germany, conquer all of Europe, we'll come over there and we'll help you out and we'll kick some butt and you can get all your land back. It also suggested that they were going to start back this unrestricted U-boat activity that they had already promised us that they weren't going to do. The British get the message, they give it to the United States, we have to declare war. You cannot threaten U.S. security. Schenck versus the U.S. This is a Supreme Court decision I want you guys to know. German immigrant Schenck, he's going to be arrested for passing out anti-World War I pamphlets. So he's anti-World War I sentiment. So he's arrested under the Sedition Act. So remember, during World War I, we have the Sedition and Espionage Act. So the Espionage and Sedition Act. He's found guilty. The court's going to actually rule that the government can restrict freedom of speech if it poses a clear and present danger to national security. So Schenck just, he thinks it's his First Amendment that he can say whatever he wants during a war. And the Supreme Court says, during a wartime, if you pose a clear and present danger to national security, they can limit your freedom of speech. Know that. How did American involvement help the Allies to win in World War I? So you need to look at the textbook page. I gave it to you, page 508. I know you didn't open up the textbooks. Let's go over it anyway. The U.S. is bringing in new troops. Okay, they're fresh. They're fresh off the farm. That's why they're called doughboys. That's why they're called doughboys. Food, supplies. I mean, you bring in food, the people who have been eating rats and bugs and rotten stuff, I mean, that's definitely going to bring up the morale of the European soldiers. They're bringing in supplies, like bullets help to win wars. Shock. And the soldiers themselves are so excited about a war. You have to understand that the last war America fought was the Spanish-American War. It took us 3 months to defeat the Spanish Empire, and we got Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. We think we're going to whip the German army. So we think that in World War I, we're going to come over there and it's going to be like 2-3 months and it'll be over. So these boys have grown up with the legacy that war is glorious, so they think war is going to be glorious. What they do, though, is they do break up the trench warfare. And so those French trenches that nobody was winning, there was a stalemate in World War I. When our boys go over there, they break up that trench warfare. They break up the stalemate. So review President Woodrow Wilson's 14 points, the what, when, and goals. What it is it's his plan for peace after World War I is over. So he says, No more militarism, no big militaries, no big armies, no big stockpiling of weapons anymore. No more imperialism. That means no more empire. So every country is going to have their own government. Every group of people will have their own government. So he calls it self-determination. And no more alliances. So nothing that's going to make people get crazy involved in a lot of like global war, which World War I was. Then he says the when is 1919, and what he wants to really do is prevent future wars. And the goal there is the League of Nations. So list 3 provisions of the Treaty of Versailles and who did not sign the actual treaty. So the League of Nations is going to be created, and the League of Nations is an international peacekeeping force. At least that's what it's supposed to be. Okay. Germany has to accept total war blame. Even though Germany did not start World War I mean, Austria is involved, the Ottoman Empire is involved, those are their central powers, their allies. They don't get any of the blame. Only Germany gets the blame. And Germany has to repay all war debt to Britain, Italy, and France. Germany has a huge problem with this. They've lost a generation of young men in the trenches. Their economy is gone. Their land will be taken. Any land that they have that's any good is going to be divvied up between Britain, Italy, and France. And so, how do you rebuild your economy? You can't. The U.S. never signs the treaty, and we don't sign it because Henry Cabot Lodge, the senator, he leads a protest against the treaty because it goes against the American foreign policy at this time of isolationism. If you sign this treaty, the U.S. is going to have to join the League of Nations. And in the League of Nations, there's this little clause that says an attack on one is an attack on all. That means it's an alliance system. And an alliance means involvement. And America does not want to have any allies. We don't want to be involved in world affairs. We want to retreat and stay on our safe soil. So what were the Palmer raids and why did it occur? So A. Mitchell Palmer is the Attorney General of the United States, which basically means he's the lawyer of our country. And there are suspected communists everywhere because the Bolshevik Revolution has occurred in Russia, and Russia ceases to exist and it becomes the Soviet Union. So everybody in the United States is getting a little paranoid, a little scared that maybe a communist takeover is going to occur here in the United States. So people suspect everybody who looks different, speaks different, acts a little strange, they're going to suspect them of being communists. So Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer is going to lead raids into people's homes. He doesn't have a warrant. I mean, they plant evidence on people. A lot of bad stuff happens. So it occurs because Americans are so suspicious that somebody's trying to overthrow our government. And there are bombs that do go off in U.S. cities, and people blame communist sympathizers. They blame anarchists for it. So what was the Great Migration? African Americans are getting tired of all the racism that goes on in the South, the Jim Crow laws, and the segregation. So what they decide to do is move up north during World War I. And they move up north, 1, to escape racism, and 2, there's better jobs in the cities than there are in the South. In the South, you're a sharecropper, tenant farmer. I mean, that's what you're going to be. There's nothing in the South other than farms during this time period. You know, you're starting to get some stuff being built, but most of what the South is sharecropping and tenant farming. Because remember, it re-enslaves former slaves, and it also is going to enslave the poor white guy too. So African Americans are moving to get rid of all that stuff, to get rid of racism, to make a better life for themselves in the North.